Hello, everybody. I'll just walk around the corner. Welcome to LightGraphix Live. I am Mo, here to talk you through what we've got coming up. I think most of you guys know me already. I've been in to see you. If anybody that's new, I'm the business development manager, and I normally go around and see everybody talk about products. But this way, we thought it was a nice, easy way to bring everybody together, talk about some of the stuff that's going to happen, and hopefully you're all not going to be sleeping by the end of the presentation. Fingers crossed. Okay, I think most people, we are still seeing on the count people are joining. We're going to give it one more minute, and then I will jump into it. Until then, let me introduce Francesca, or Fran, our business, our marketing manager, coordinator. Come on, say hi.
Hi everyone, nice to meet you. Yep, as Mo said, I am looking after marketing here at LightGraphix, so you might see my face more often around here. But yeah, glad you're all here. I hope you enjoy.
There we go. So the purpose of the presentation, let me just load up the slide. Okay. If I go onto the PC, I'm pretty sure you might not see everything. Let me just share the screen. It's all sharing? I don't think it is.
Yeah, it's fine. It's all good.
You sure?
Yeah. We need to go back on.
That one?
Yeah.
No, it's this one, screen two.
No, this one.
That's this one. It's 100%. There we go. There we go. So, are we on? Can you see the presentation?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is little technical issues. So what is LightGraphix? What is it? What are we talking about today? I think, to be honest, it's time to begin because, it's 3 minutes into 12. So LightGraphix Live and this update is about smaller changes and updates to the range, but altogether it's kind of bringing together a nice big good start to the year with a few updates and introductions of stuff that we're going to be doing for the coming years. So first thing I'll run through is our update for the high power range. We're going to be talking about some of the performance stuff that we've highlighted in our data sheets. We're going to try and get enough time for any questions and answers. You'll see on if you used the webinar thing before, you can raise your hand, you can ask questions, you can just interact with, if there's anything you want to know more about whilst I'm doing the presentation, I'll start to pause at certain times so I can try and answer questions quickly as and when they come up. And there's some new products which I'll quickly and very briefly kind of show you guys, which will coming up throughout the rest of the year. Okay, so what is E2, E1? So some of you will have used our products, or hopefully all of you would have used our products. And we have an engine code, was before E1. Now we're changing all those high power engines to E2. This is simply because the manufacturer is no longer making the LED. So the older version, they've upgraded us to the newer version. So it just gives us a lot more, gives a bit more performance, and it gives us an opportunity to kind of upgrade the rest of the range. So what we're going to do is talk about the new engines that we're introducing into the range, the black edge glass, which you'll see in this image, which we're going to bring into the range, and some data and figure and improvements, which we put in the data sheet. And we've also taken the opportunity to talk about finishes. It's not new, but I think just highlighting and putting images into our websites or our data sheets so you can see what we do with our finishes. So the E2 engine is basically a smallest form factor of LED that we use to get those really nice narrow beams. And so with the new version of the LED, we should get a gradual increase, which I'll show in the next slide, next couple of slides, what the outputs are. And it just gives us the opportunity to look at the board design and try and introduce a way to get it more modular so we can fit more things into product that we did before. So it's kind of taken, it's not such a big update that we'll do on its own, but as a general impact on what it could bring with it, we thought we'll do some of the things and take the opportunity to upgrade the range. And this will all start from the 1st of March. So if you've got any projects, anything that's coming to fruition, LEDs will start to, you'll start to see the shift. So anything that was old E1s will suddenly get shifted to E2s. And hopefully our sales team would have been in touch already for any projects like that, so that you know what is coming up, sign off on any data sheets, any things you might need to sign off on, so the orders just go ahead and get sorted. On to the next slide. So as I was saying, the board design is you've got a modularized version so we can fit more than one engine. It's quite simple in the way that we've thought about doing this, in that there is projects where you want to have different types of outputs, different types of options. And the way we've tried to design it is to make it more flexible. So that's as easy as that, really, for what we've done differently, which is what's different to the old version, which is completely different to the new versions. Our performance figures are there. So you can see the LD150s, 151s, 155s, they're all pretty much increasing from E1 to E2. There is a slight difference, I mean, very small, from 617 to 614. I think that could just be because of the multiple times we took those things in the lab. There's a very small decrease, but other than that, everything else is increasing in value. The one thing to note is the 10236, that's the dual emission wall light that we have, so which is why it has a big old lumen figure, but it's half of it's up, half of it's down. Okay, so that's in terms of the engine comparison. Any questions? This is a lovely picture of a project we did called the Fitzroy Hotel. It's got a 151s in there and some 10238s and stuff dotted around, and Wally 151s. Has there been any questions so far, Fran? No. Let me rambling on. Anybody? Don't be afraid. Just ask questions as you go on. But yeah, there we go. So the other thing, we have introduced the N1 and F1 engines into the range. Now, why do we have these and what are they? The N1 is the engine we were using on our downlights anyway, but we thought, but they had a higher output lumen, so around about 900 delivered. And so we took this chance to really introduce the higher power cobs into a certain amount of it. So at the moment, it's going into our LD155 and a 10238s. So they can offer us the higher output options. You can still have the E2 option as an engine, and it gives you the higher outputs when you need it. So then we also thought, why not offer a dedicated 2.2? So with the E1 so far, whenever you wanted a warm color temperature, it's always had to be with maybe a filter, with a glass, things like that. Whereas now we took the opportunity to find a small engine that can give us the dedicated 2200 Kelvin. And we're calling that engine the F1. And both the N1 and the F1 engines are over 90 CRI. And this is some of the delivered lumen packages here, as you can see. It does give you a nice jump in lumens when you need it. If you are wanting the small form factor for 155 or a spotlight that can do a bit more output, and we have that option now. So when we compare the outputs across the range, you can see that the 151, for example, is 595, still pretty, nearly 600 lumens, to be honest. Then you've got about 348 lumens in the 2200 Kelvin. So it's just a slightly warmer glow that we have. I actually have with me, behind me, a live demo of that. So let me just, we have here the LD155. This is the E2 engine. So as you can see, it still has the really nice peak intensity. The beam angle is still really nice and narrow, and it does give you the throw of light up to about 6-7 meters. So that's the E2. Yes.
Camera.
Sorry.
Just show again, just because the camera wasn't on.
Oh, the camera wasn't on. There you go. That's the E2. Sorry. So I'm trying to move it away from the wall a bit, so you can see the narrow beam. You can see that it's got really nice, like a peak intensity going on over there. If we try out the wall for columns, for example, it does got really nice. All right, and then what we have is the really nice warm 2,200 Kelvin. Nothing really. I mean, the beam angle is slightly wider, not as high as peak intensity, but it just gives you that really nice dedicated warm color temperature. Realize you can't really quite see it because of the hot spots on the camera, but it's there. And then the monster, there's 900 lumens, just gives you that higher output. So when we compare, it does give you there we go. So that it just gives you a bit more lumens than the E1. Okay. Got lights in my eyes. Okay, so some of the beam angles a bit more in a format that you guys probably will be able to understand a bit better. So the cone diagram show, we've got really nice, as much as possible, we try to keep the same intensity in the lux values is nice and high. And this will be on our data sheet, so you can see them. And you know, with our E2, you can still hit 9 meters high with the narrow beam. Then you've got the N1, which should do the same, and then the F1 to give you that color temperature. It's nice and warm. Why would you use what for your projects? I guess to summarize quickly, the E2s have always been great at a low glare, high output as an engine, with the way that we put it into our 151, but with the range of products that we have and the glare control we have. It gives you the really nice narrow beam, about 10 degrees, and it gives you a color consistency. And on the board, we designed the reverse polarity protection. So that's what you still get with the E2. When you step up to the N1, it gives you the higher output options. It gives you dedicated 2,200 Kelvin. It's 90 CRI, and it's more thermally efficient. So for some areas in the world, you can get, if you're wanting a higher output product, we normally tell you to go down to 500 milliamps. By switching over to the N1, you can maintain the lumen figures, and but it's probably better suited for wider beam angles because the narrowest beam angle in there is 25 degrees. Then you've got the F1, which is slightly lower output, 2,200 Kelvin, and can be more cost effective. Okay, so another lovely picture here from the Langley Hotel. We have the 151s there shining at the columns. Really lovely project that we did with DPI. Any questions?
Yep, so will E1 and E2 match in colour exactly if an existing scheme needs some fittings replacing, with the only change required being dimming to match intensity?
Very, very good question. And if I'm being perfectly honest with you guys, we are trying to keep a certain amount of E1 engines available for the future, for replacements, for small additions and things like that to arrange. The E2 is very similar. It's not exact, and that's the honest truth. We're going to have to get to the point where, yeah, like you said, maybe by dimming it down a little bit, you'll be able to get to the same output. But in terms of an LED, is it the same on the same part of the curve in terms of the color temperature? Will you notice the difference between a 3,000 Kelvin E2 and a 3,000 Kelvin E1? As far as we've tested with our naked eyes, we've not noticed it, but you know, there are different options and viewing angles. People have different things that they see when they see lights on the wall, but vast majority of the times you won't notice a difference between an E1 and E2. But in terms of if you're going for the narrowest beams, you probably notice them more, whereas in the wider beams and the cooler color temperatures, 3,000 Kelvin, for example, onwards, you barely notice it. It's just that with a 2,700 Kelvin, there may be a very slight difference, but we can always get to that point and showcase the differences with you guys if that's a big concern. But we should have, fingers crossed, a certain amount of E1s available for the future. But then when they run out, they run out. It's not really been a decision that's been on our control. So we've tried the very best to kind of think of all the outcomes that could happen and try and plan for it. There will be projects, obviously, that we can't foresee, have issues that we can't foresee, but as much as we can, we've planned and tried to give you guys an option for.
Yeah,
Did that answer that?
So is the 2,200 available now? And is there one in the middle? I think your range now goes 2,200, 2,700, 3,000, but 2,400 would be nice as well.
I mean, this is the question, really. There's no 2,400 Kelvin dedicated LED that we've got on our range. However, we have been playing with, and we've had some help with some friends that have managed to maybe find an option with a filter, for example, that gets to a nice 2,400 Kelvin, but it is through a filter. Maybe starting at 2,700 Kelvin, and it's a small shift down to 2,400. But the only way at the moment is through a filter or a glass of some sort. And we always try and explain the positives and negatives of that. But at the moment, we don't have a dedicated 2.4. But depends. If you guys are all suddenly changing your specs to 2.4, then, you know, we just have to do, we'll have to find an option out there. But so far, we've not found anything that gives us the same output, the same beam angle options, the same color consistency, all the things that we try and do. There's a big compromise there somewhere, and at the moment we've not found an answer for that, for a dedicated chip.
And will an E2 chip be installable in an old E1 fitting if it is returned for a replacement? Yeah,
there is a way, yes. We've got the old PCB still available. We are able to do that for a very limited amount of reasons, but yeah, we can. But just like you said, email us. We'll talk you through it, and then we'll give you the best option on the table as and when that comes up. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, thanks, guys. Those are really good questions, Zach. Fire them over. So the other big aesthetic change is the black trim glass. There's no point, you know, what this gives us is a aesthetical change. It really makes what we thought would be quite nice. It makes the bezel smaller, well, aesthetically looks smaller, and it frames the metal finishes, for example, or the painted finishes that you have. So instead of as before, where you might have a slightly wider viewing angle of the bezel to the before it goes down into the LED, we've tried to give it a slight difference, and we've timed it well with the E2. So there's an easy way to spot what's an E2 engine and what's an old E1 engine. So that's the thought process why it's nice to bring that together. It does reduce the glare of the glass as well. So you've got, it does help with reducing glare as well on projects, even without the glare louvers. And because of the fact that you've got the glass with a black edge, we've had to use a tougher, more robust glass. So we're getting IK ratings now of IK8, and they're on our data sheets. And we're going to get them so that you know that the 6mm toughened glass does give you a minimum rating of IK8. So, oh yeah, there we go. So that is the old, nice classic E1. And what we've done is take the opportunity to bring it up to modern standard. So you can see there, you've got a really nice, it just makes that bezel just pop a bit more. In our opinion, I know you guys might have a different view of what you like and what you don't like, but that's a 150, that's a 151. But as you can see, the bezel does look a lot slimmer. And that's basically what we've tried to our very best to bring out and offer a modern take or a modern update on the classic. So that's black trim glass, which leads us on to our finishes. We do our own in-house finishes. I mean, this has been the thing that we've over the years invested more time and more resources into. We've now got 3 wet spray booths in the factory. So we are in control as to the quality of the finish, how much, what our tolerances are, how much we can get. You know, we have such a high stringent level of like, we need to make sure it's perfect before it leaves. And we can control that internally and train our painters to really get the finishes that we're after. It does mean that we can maybe get wet spray finishes or paint finishes that look a lot like anodized metal. which is quite nice as an aesthetic. You can do them as samples, for example, when you guys see them. We do have our own bespoke finishes, like the flame bronze, antique bronze finishes that we do. And we always have our brass finishes as well. So we're made out of a billet of machined brass. So in terms of looking through what we've got, we're taking this opportunity to showcase what we've already been doing over the last how many years. But at the same time, trying to introduce new colors, because we can do a color, any color. Just give us a raw color code or a sample to match, and we'll do our best to find a way to find a finish that matches to that. And we do that all in house. I think that's been the biggest, maybe you may not know in the past. On our data sheets, and I think when we get to the data sheet section, you'll see that we've got actual finished pictures that we've taken off the fitting. So when you do ask, what does a brass finish look like? What does a flame bronze finish look like? It's all kind of there, and it explains as a very simple guide, really, where you'd use what fitting where. As in a 316 stainless steel, we've got polished stainless steel, brass, and we use a billet of brass. This is not painted. And we do flame bronze and a normal wet spray finishes, for example. So it does give you a good idea of where you can use it interior, exterior. But the biggest thing is whether you will use them in high traffic areas or low traffic areas. I think that's where some of the times you may have been in touch with us in the past and asked, can we have this color because it's going outside? But then we've started to, I think, hopefully being more in touch with saying, is it going to be in a high traffic area, low traffic area? Because at the end of the day, if we use some of our painted finishes, it can be scratched and then you see the bezel underneath. And we've spent a lot of time to come up with ways that we could try to alleviate against that. But at the moment, our metal finishes are the best for those for high traffic areas. But it's the stainless steel that's really the one we'd recommend. Flame bronze is what's also used quite often. And then we're now starting to look at powder coating. So we can offer a powder coat finish for projects where you just want to have a bit more color variation on our standard bezels. Okay, so in terms of linears, for example, we do also offer different types of finishes on our linears, the LD38s and 34s, for example. So our wet spray finishes don't just apply to our uplights, it's our spotlights, it's throughout the range. In terms of a nice little example that we've used is the LightGraphix Blue, just to give you an example of what we can do with our finishes. But as a standard, we've tried to bring in like from silver anodized to the new anthracite gray and things like that, and the satin antique brass and satin brass. So there's slight differences in shades that will keep us standard. But yeah, any color finish based on a raw code, we will look to match and send you examples of. And it's with our new 2-pack wet spray. And that is a new, well, we've taken that opportunity because it gives us a bit more protection on our finishes. So it's not just a simple one coat of paint. We do try and do a lot more with that. I'll try and go to number 3. Yep. So there we go. That's the anthracite gray. It does look, you know, in your hands, it does look quite nice, quite a nice metallic finish. And that's a lot more brighter, but that's the blue of the LightGraphix, or we can call it whatever you like, but it could be any raw color code, and that's something that we're trying to do more and more often. Okay, so then project here in Barcelona, Nestle, we did through our partners in Spain. It's LD170s that have got a pre-angled tilt down to the floor, so it's pretty cool. Yeah, I can't wait when the whole lockdown disappears, we can all go away. I may not be sad enough to go to see projects that we've done in the past, but this looks really cool. Any questions so far?
What is passivation?
What is passivation? Passivation is a process which we've done, I don't know, since way back when, and it's a process where we've had to introduce for our marine yacht lighting products, and that's been mainly because the process where it removes impurities from the bezel. It's an extra step that we do on our marine, on our stainless steel marine grade, but there is still some some bits of impurities, and it's a process where we remove as much as possible, and then we polish them down to give you that mirror-like finish. And it just allows, basically, it stops, as far as we've done with ours, it stops the process of getting rust and abrasive chemicals and things that can actually attack the bezel and deteriorate the color finish or the actual quality. It's a process we've done and we have been doing. So that's basically what passivation is, without going into too technical stuff. But obviously, if we do a presentations separately, individually, I can go into more detail there.
Do you offer a marine grade paint finish for high saline environments?
So we have our technical director, actually, Simon. He has, I think his parents' house is by the coast in Brighton. And we've taken like bezels of different finishes that we've done over the years, whether it's 2-pack wets, like for example, our wet spray finishes, our powder coat finishes, anodized finishes, and some of the other more special finishes that we do. And we've had them by the sea, for example, and our wet spray comes out great. You know, it's one of those things where we've noticed there is some changes in color, and as with, for example, our brass bezels, unless you do a constant cleaning program of wiping them down and things like that, there is the natural oxidation, and it's the natural reaction the bezels have with oxygen or with the environment, and it changes color. So we're trying to take pictures of how bezels look 6 months, a year down the line, type of thing. So just to give some view, some stuff you could share with your clients to say, look, you know, you like this bezel, it's great, but it will change color. There's no way to keep it the same unless you do a certain amount of polishing and cleaning and maintenance. But even then, you'd be hard pressed to find a bezel, like a brass bezel, that will be staying shiny forever. But we will always try and give you as much information from the beginning as possible. Oh, that's it. Okay. So the next one. Data sheet refresh. So what we've done at the same time is take the opportunity to look at data sheets, update images, trying to make it a bit more precise with the information that we give you, highlight the key features as much as possible, and bring in the performance statistics that really show how we are different to our competition. So when we are pressed on finding what keeps LightGraphix on a project, what's unique about LightGraphix, there is now a lot more data which we can go through, which I'll explain now as well. And we've got a lot of more photography of our finishes. So it does illustrate things sometimes a lot easier than getting samples. But like we said, we can send sample swatches anytime. I'm using the example of the 151 here. At the beginning, you can see that we've got some icons that explain what the different output options are, SIP rating. For example, this means as an uplight, it's a pretty low glare. And let me just see if I can get, there you go. As an uplight or as a tilted wall light. So for example, the 151T, you can do a wall wash as well. It has the engine here for the E2, which is annotated by the cross. So that's what we mean by on our data sheets, for example, on our driver catalog. If you download them, a 4 LED option, because that's what the E2 is. It's 4 LEDs that are put together as close as possible to create a uniform output. Our F1 is here as well, and that just shows it's a warmer color temperature, but you'll see that by that note. We can do RGBW, we can do bespoke 2-channel boards and things like that. So it's all depending on what it is you're after. And it does try and give you some explanation as what it is. And then it moves into the key features, for example, the reverse polarity protection that we have, the output that we have, and it gives you a picture with the dimensions on here as well, and tries to talk about as many things as it comes internally in the fitting that makes it unique. And that's what we'll try to illustrate here, so it's nice and concise. And then in the next page, what we had was the small section that talked about the outputs. Now we've got a dedicated section that talks about all the beam angles that are available for each engine, what the manufacturer is of the LED, what the color temperatures are available, the standard, what the currents are, and what the wattage is based on the driver as well. So it gives you all the different wattages that you have. Then it gives you delivered lumens, not source lumens, but actual delivered lumens. And it gives you the lumen circuit per watt. So it does give you the efficiencies there as well. we've added it in terms of, you know, all the standard stuff in there. We've added in peak intensity. The peak intensity just really showcases that the 151, even though it's 600 delivered lumens, for example, in the narrow beam, it does punch that light up quite a lot. And and that's one of the things which sometimes in the past struggled to mention. Whereas now I hope it's just on the data sheets, it shows that we've got a really nice bright fitting. And then what we have underneath here is a LOR value, so light output ratio, in terms of having that on our data sheets is, we think is really important. And then you've got the UGR values and TM30 with a gamut. We don't have the actual diagram, but we give you the figures there. One of the things about the fact that we've got the peak intensity and the UGR and the LOR as a combination, that kind of illustrates how much we concentrate on glare control, how much we concentrate on the perfect beam angle. And yes, it might not be as bright, but what we try and make sure we do is make it as efficient as possible. We utilize as many of the lumens that come out and make sure it's as glare free as possible. And that balance is why we're not, you know, that juggling process is how we always approach it, which is the most important is the beam angle and the glare control. Oh yeah, one thing to notice here as well, we're giving you the percentage on the table of what it is if you are to, for example, move to 2700 Kelvin, move to 4000 Kelvin and 5000 Kelvin. So that calculation there just helps give you the output ratios. So the ambient temperature we've added on here as well. So from where to where and what milliampage it needs to be at, for example, and a little bit more information on my IK rating, and weights are now on our data sheets. So not super exciting, but you know, it gives you all the details that you need. And in terms of here, I thought it'd be quite nice to show you the peak intensity values. And so we can see that, for example, the 151, 150s, the really high peak intensity values. Then when you look at the N1 value, for example, you can see that it drops down to 2900. Yeah, you get more output, but it's not as, let's say, it doesn't chuck the light as bright up, for example, in a narrow beam, whereas, for example, the 155 in the E2 does give you that really nice intensity. And the same thing and it just drops off a bit as well when you go to the 2200 Kelvin. And you can see that's across the board, really. It does give you that really nice outputs of light. We still have got some of the engines that we talked about. For example, the color, the CLR engine to see it. So it gives you the colors that you want, whether you want blue, green, black, or not black. You can have black if you want. Different colors that you'd like, specifically RGBW and tunable white. So we try and give you as much help with when you are tuning your white between the color temperatures that we've got there. And a bit of an example as to how each things are wired and what cables come with what, for example. The finishes are here as well at the bottom, so just explaining that as well. So that's available on every and all the new updated data sheets for the E2 range. The accessories are quite clearly listed as well with pictures and dimensions and sizes, what's available with what. It just gives you a bit more explanation as to what it is that you need to use where. Some images of our glare shields, which really does help give you an idea of what the aesthetics look like depending on the glare option you choose. Cone diagrams for each engine, just to give you an idea of how far and how bright each things are. And we've tried to keep this installation guide to give you some help with the spacings between your washes to give you that really nice even glows. If you're doing an oval beam, for example, a nice wash, what spacing you need to have and how far away from the wall. And you can notice here that we've changed our configurator because before you'd have this version where you'd highlight, but at least this way, it clearly shows all the engine choices that you have available to you, what the color temperatures are available. So you just kind of flow from one to another and it just pinpoints your options, and it's there for like technical submittals and things like that where you're highlighting, wanting to make sure this is what you're asking for, this is what you'd like, and then we can match on our quotations. So a lovely project here by Illumination Works. It's in a hotel spa area in, I think, actually Hertfordshire, I think, called the Newt, yeah. So we've got small LD51s there that are uplighting, and I think those are 151s at the one there. Yeah, any questions?
Can Can you add a glare shield option to all the integrated 20-degree tilt fittings? They are great, but a little glary. For example, LD47 and LD48.
Oh, the bigger versions. Okay. Well, I don't see why not. So far, what we've done is done a update called with the 42s and 43s. We've introduced the R range, and what they are is basically normal the half moon glare shield, for example. The glare shield that came with the 42 would cover half of the light. The R takes it to about 70%. It gets covered, so it just offers a tiny opening, but it does reduce the glare quite a lot. We could always look at doing something similar like that for the bigger 47s, but that's, to be honest, we'll follow our specials procedure at the moment, but don't be afraid. Our special procedure is I think it's one of the things you guys would probably love to use us the most for. And it does give you the option to have things that aren't generally available, and we'll try and make sure we are on budget as much as possible. Budget. The Northern's coming at me. Oh, sorry, there's another question.
Will the new E2 fittings price match the previous E1 fittings?
Yes, all apart from the LD155. The LD155, unfortunately, has had to go for a tiny increase in price, I think by £10. That's only because of suppliers that have increased their prices to us. But everything else we managed to keep exactly the same. So there's no price increase in the E2 range, apart from just the 155, but that was more to do with the fitting than it was to do with the LED. So thank you guys very much. I'm sorry it's overrun by 10 minutes, but I'm hoping you guys have enjoyed it. Is there any questions so far that's come up? Right?
Yeah, there was a few.
Okay.
Available beam angles for the new downlights.
Yeah, so the 780s, you'll have a narrower medium beam, mainly, to be honest, because LEDs are set a bit further back from the front. But it's mainly narrow and medium beams that you'll have for those. But if you have a need for a wider beam angle, it's one of those things you just got to get in touch with us and we'll see what we can do. But yeah, narrow and medium.
What is the lumen output for the LD1094?
The 1094 will be the same as the downlights, around about up to 900 lumens delivered, depending on the engine choice you use. So there are engine choices there as well. But once the datasheet comes out, you'll follow it and it gives you those things. But it will follow the same outputs of a bigger downlight, so about 900 delivered with a 90 CRI chip.
And what is the difference between the LD151 and the LD154?
Oh, so I mean, I shouldn't do, because I'm like, no, don't do it. So basically, that's the 155. That's the 15. Let's see if I can get an interesting. There we go. That's a different color. That's the 155, and that's the 151. So it's a bigger fitting. That's what the difference is. So we're taking this as the baseline and using the body to create a more powerful fitting. So it'll have hopefully the same options, the same things that you like to use with LightGraphix, but in a higher output product. So if there's ever a thing that you're thinking, I would love to use LightGraphix, but I want something over 1,000 lumens, over 1,500 lumens, things like that, we've got a dedicated single optic engine coming with more output.
And has Brexit affected your costs when importing parts or exporting finished products overseas? And do we need to account for this in estimates?
Ooh, you've asked the Brexit question. I thought I could get through the whole presentation without answering that. All right, so Brexit has caused a lot of disruption. We've tried our best not to increase prices, but nevertheless, we're getting daily, it feels like weekly emails from our suppliers, from packaging to different things, all increasing the prices. The cost for delivery out into the Europe is increasing a little bit more. The things that we get sometimes from Europe, like drivers and things, we're so far doing okay with, but it's always the delay. I think that's the problem. So far, nobody really knows what they're doing paperwork wise. So there are sometimes a few delays when it gets to get product in and then to send it out. There is that kind of, we've spent a good part of, I don't know how long, 6 months in and out of presentations, meetings and things that we can try and get the process to be as smooth as possible. So to answer your question, is there an impact? so far, if you haven't been in touch, if nobody's been in touch with you about a price rise or anything like that, means we managed to keep it as it is. If we have been in touch with you, it's a relationship. It's a conversation first, and then we'll see how and what we can do, because we'll be faced with certain price rises. If it comes down the line, we can't forecast what those might be, but we'll try and communicate that with you guys as much as possible, so there is a plan as to what we can do. But so far, if no one's been in touch with you from the sales team, then you are okay. So no news is good news until there's bad news, and then in which case we'll be in touch. But so far, there's no plans of increasing prices.
One last question. What is the difference in low glare between the LD42D and the LD42W?
42D is an actual, I don't have an example of it, but the 42W is a flat stainless steel bezel, and we put the glare shield in, so it stays much more closer, lower profile in the wall, and it gives you that really nice output. What the 42D gives you is a billet of material. It makes it more of a feature. It makes it more decorative, for example, so you can have different types of finishes, but it's like a half dome that comes out. And the reason why, in terms of it does give you less of a viewing angle to the source of the light, where if it's flat, you see more into it, whereas the dome just covers it a bit more. So you have to be pretty far away to be able to see the source of the light, the source of the glare. So you give you a bit more of a low glare option. There'll be more information on that. Obviously, there'll be samples, so you can play with them, see what you like, you don't like. Hopefully, you like them, and then it's just an option for when we've seen there is a nice need for having something that's a bit more decorative but lower glare for projects where you need to have something that's washing on the floor or something like that. All right, I think that's it. That's all the questions. I wish I could see you all. It's not the same. It's weird speaking to a TV screen or a camera, not really seeing how and what you guys are thinking. How many of you are asleep? I hope none of you are asleep. But let us know if you want any more information. Get in touch with the sales team for samples. Get in touch with me if you want anything specifically. And we'll do our best to come back to you as soon as possible. Lovely having you. Thank you so much for your time. Follow our Instagram and LinkedIn. Social media, like, subscribe, follow. And yeah, good to see you guys. Take care.